I'm staring at my laptop screen right now, typing this from my corner office on the 42nd floor of Manhattan's financial district. The irony isn't lost on me. 6 months ago, I was crying in a bathroom stall after being told I was too emotional to lead. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I spent 8 years climbing the corporate ladder at Henderson & Associates, one of Chicago's most prestigious consulting firms. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and proving myself in a world that seemed designed to keep women like me in supporting roles. The morning that changed everything started like any other Tuesday in March. Chicago's wind was particularly brutal that day, cutting through my wool coat as I hurried from the L station to our downtown office. I had my presentation materials clutched against my chest, the presentation that was supposed to secure my promotion to senior partner. I'd been working toward this moment for 3 years. The Hartwell account alone had brought in $2.4 million for the firm, and that was just one of 12 major clients I'd personally landed and managed. My team consistently exceeded targets. Client satisfaction scores were through the roof, and I'd mentored 6 junior associates who'd all received promotions under my guidance. Walking into that glass-walled conference room at 9 a.m. sharp, I felt confident, ready. The partnership committee was already seated. 5 men in their 50s and 60s, all wearing variations of the same navy suit. At the head of the table sat Marcus Henderson himself, the founding partner whose approval could make or break careers. "Sarah, please take a seat," Marcus said, gesturing to the lone chair facing the panel. The setup felt more like an interrogation than a promotion meeting, but I maintained my composure. I launched into my presentation, outlining my achievements, revenue generation, and strategic vision for the firm's future. For 20 minutes, I spoke with the passion and precision that had defined my career. When I finished, the room fell silent. Then Marcus leaned back in his leather chair and delivered the words that would haunt me. "Sarah, there's no question about your technical abilities or your results. However, the committee has some concerns about your leadership style." "My leadership style?" I repeated, genuinely confused. James Morrison, the HR director, cleared his throat. "We've received feedback that you can be quite intense in your interactions. Some colleagues find your approach overwhelming." "Overwhelming how?" I pressed, feeling my heart rate spike. "Well," Marcus continued, "just last month during the Blackstone presentation, you became visibly upset when the client questioned our timeline. Tom Williams had to step in to smooth things over." I remembered that meeting vividly. The client had suggested cutting our research phase in half, which would have compromised the entire project's integrity. I'd advocated firmly for maintaining our standards, the same way I'd seen every male partner do dozens of times. I was protecting the quality of our work, I explained. The timeline they suggested would have been impossible to execute properly. "That may be," James interjected, "but the way you handled it raised concerns." Several team members mentioned feeling uncomfortable with the tension in the room. For the next 15 minutes, they dissected my emotional responses to various workplace situations. Every instance of passion was reframed as volatility. Every moment of advocacy was painted as aggression. They had documentation, witness statements, and carefully crafted language that made me sound unhinged. The meeting ended with Marcus delivering the final blow. "We've decided to hold off on your promotion for now. Perhaps consider working with an executive coach on your communication style. We want to see you succeed, Sarah, but leadership requires a certain temperament." I walked out of that room feeling hollowed out, like someone had reached inside my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. 8 years of my life, and they'd reduced me to being too emotional to lead. But as I sat in my small office later that afternoon, something else began to replace the hurt. Determination. I started making phone calls. That evening, I did something I'd never done before in my 8 years at Henderson & Associates. I left the office at exactly 5 p.m. I needed space to think, and I couldn't do that surrounded by the mahogany-paneled walls that suddenly felt like a prison. Instead, I found myself at Millennium Park, sitting on a bench despite the cold March air, watching commuters hurry past. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend and former colleague, Jennifer Torres. "Heard about the meeting. Coffee tomorrow? I have some things to tell you." That message kept me awake most of the night. The next morning, I met Jen at our usual spot, a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. She looked nervous, continuously glancing around as if expecting someone to be watching us. "Sarah, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to make you angry," she began, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "More angry than I already am?" I asked, attempting a laugh that came out hollow. "I was in James Morrison's office last week, dropping off some HR paperwork, when his phone rang. He thought I'd left, but I was still organizing files by his desk." Jen paused, taking a deep breath. "It was Marcus on the phone, and they were talking about your promotion." My stomach dropped. "What did they say?" "Marcus said, and I quote, 'We need to find a way to justify not promoting her without it looking like discrimination. She's too emotional to lead, but we can't put it that bluntly in writing.'" The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. What else? James suggested focusing on leadership temperament and communication concerns. They spent 10 minutes crafting the language they'd use in your meeting. Marcus even laughed and said something about how you get all worked up like most women do when challenged. I felt that familiar rage building, but this time I didn't try to suppress it. This time, I let it fuel me. "There's more," Jen continued quietly. "I started paying attention after that call. I've been documenting everything I've witnessed over the past 2 years. Sarah, the way they talk about the women in this firm when they think no one's listening, it's bad." Over the next hour, Jennifer laid out a pattern of discrimination so blatant it was almost comical. Male associates who shouted in meetings were called passionate leaders, while women who raised their voices were labeled difficult. Men who pushed back on unrealistic deadlines were standing up for quality, while women doing the same thing were not team players. She told me about Lisa Chen, who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite bringing in more revenue than any other associate-level employee. About Maria Santos, whose ideas were consistently dismissed in meetings, only to be praised when repeated by male colleagues. About the countless subtle ways our contributions were minimized and our reactions pathologized. "I've been keeping records," Jen whispered, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Email chains, meeting notes, recorded conversations from my phone when legal in public spaces. 2 years' worth of evidence." "Why are you doing this?" I asked, though I was already suspecting the answer. "Because they passed me over for senior associate last year. Told me I needed to be more collaborative and less pushy." Meanwhile, David Chen got promoted after literally throwing a stapler across the conference room during a budget meeting. That afternoon, I made another phone call. This one to Elizabeth Harper, a labor attorney I'd met at a networking event the previous year. Within an hour, I was sitting in her downtown office, laying out everything I'd learned. "How strong do you think our case is?" I asked, after walking her through the evidence. Elizabeth smiled, the kind of smile that made me understand why she'd never lost a discrimination case. "Sarah, what you've described isn't just discrimination. It's systematic, documented discrimination. With the evidence your friend has gathered, this is the kind of case that changes company policies industry-wide. What are my options?" "Well, you could file a complaint with the EEOC, pursue internal resolution, or..." She paused, studying my face. "You could consider a more strategic approach." "What kind of strategic approach?" "The kind where you don't just win a settlement. You expose the entire system." The plan Elizabeth and I devised was both simple and brilliant. Document everything while appearing to comply with their feedback. For the next 2 months, I became the model of corporate compliance. I scheduled sessions with an executive coach, took notes on improving my communication style, and even thanked Marcus for his constructive feedback in writing. Every email, every interaction, every meeting was carefully orchestrated to build our case. Meanwhile, Jennifer continued gathering evidence from inside HR, and I started reaching out to former female employees who'd left Henderson and Associates under suspicious circumstances. The stories were infuriating and heartbreakingly similar. Amanda Rodriguez, who'd been forced out after reporting sexual harassment from a client. Kelly Thompson, whose maternity leave was mysteriously followed by a restructuring that eliminated her position. Sarah Kim, who'd been told her accent was difficult for clients to understand, despite being born in Illinois. Each woman had been isolated, made to feel like her experience was unique, her reactions unreasonable, but together, their stories formed an undeniable pattern. In early May, I received an email that made my blood boil, an invitation to apply for a lateral position as senior associate in the firm's new diversity and inclusion division. The implication was clear. They were offering me a consolation prize, a role that would let them check their diversity box while keeping me away from actual decision-making power. That same week, Tom Williams, the same Tom Williams who'd supposedly saved the Blackstone presentation, was promoted to senior partner. His qualifications? He'd brought in one major client in 5 years and had been with the firm for 6 years, 2 less than me. The announcement email praised his natural leadership abilities and calm demeanor under pressure. Reading those words, I realized they weren't just promoting Tom. They were sending a message to every woman in the firm about what real leadership looked like. That evening, I called Elizabeth. "I'm ready to move forward." "Are you sure?" "Once we file the EEOC complaint, there's no going back. Your career at Henderson & Associates will effectively be over." I looked around my small office, at the awards on my wall, at the client thank you notes I'd collected over 8 years. Then I thought about Jennifer, still fighting for recognition, about all the women who'd been pushed out before me, about the young female associates who were watching and learning that no matter how hard they worked, the glass ceiling was real and unbreakable. "I'm sure," I said, "but I want to do something first." The next morning, I walked into Marcus Henderson's office with a smile on my face and a resignation letter in my hand. "Marcus, I wanted to thank you personally for the feedback you provided regarding my leadership style," I began, settling into the chair across from his massive desk. "It's been incredibly enlightening." He looked confused but pleased. "I'm glad to hear that, Sarah. Growth is always possible with the right attitude." "Absolutely. In fact, I've learned so much about myself these past few months. I've realized that you were right. I am too emotional to lead. At least, too emotional to lead here." His smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I get emotional about things like equality, fairness, and basic human decency. I get emotional when I see talented women being systematically undermined and pushed aside. I get emotional when I realize I've spent 8 years of my life making money for people who see me as fundamentally less capable because of my gender." Marcus's face was shifting from confusion to alarm. "Sarah, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Oh, there's been no misunderstanding," I continued, my voice steady and clear. "I understand perfectly, which is why I'm resigning, effective immediately." I placed the letter on his desk, stood up, and walked toward the door. Then I turned back for one final comment. "By the way, Marcus, you'll be hearing from the EEOC soon. I hope your lawyers are as good as you think your leadership skills are." The look on his face, shocked, panicked, calculating, was worth every sleepless night I'd endured since that March morning. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my corner office at Goldman Sachs, looking out at the Manhattan skyline and smiling at the irony of it all. The EEOC investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Elizabeth had been right. The evidence was overwhelming. Jennifer's documentation, combined with testimonies from 15 former and current female employees, painted a picture of systematic discrimination that made headlines in the Chicago Tribune, Wall Street Journal, and Harvard Business Review. Henderson & Associates settled for $2.8 million, but the monetary settlement was just the beginning. They were required to implement comprehensive bias training, restructure their promotion process, and submit to 3 years of independent monitoring. Marcus Henderson himself stepped down as managing partner. More importantly, the case sparked industry-wide conversations about gender discrimination in professional services. Other firms began reviewing their own practices, and several high-profile cases emerged across the country. But the real victory came 2 weeks after the settlement was announced. I received a call from Rebecca Goldman herself, the managing partner of Goldman Sachs's Chicago office. "Ms. Mitchell, I've been following your case closely," she said. "We're expanding our consulting division, and we need someone with your expertise and, let's call them leadership qualities, to head up the new practice." The offer was everything Henderson & Associates had refused to give me: senior partner level, equity stake, and the authority to build the division according to my vision. But more than that, it was validation. Recognition that my emotional leadership style was actually exactly what modern clients needed. My first hire was Jennifer Torres as my deputy, My second was Lisa Chen, who'd finally left Henderson & Associates after being passed over for promotion a fourth time. Together, we've built a team that values passion, advocates for excellence, and refuses to accept the status quo. Our first-year revenue exceeded projections by 40%. Client satisfaction scores are the highest in the company's history. And yes, we're emotional. Emotional about our work, our clients, and our commitment to creating a workplace where talent is recognized, regardless of gender. Last week, I received an email that made me laugh out loud. It was from Tom Williams, the man who'd been promoted in my place, asking if we had any openings at Goldman Sachs. Apparently, Henderson & Associates' revenue had dropped 30% since the settlement, and they were conducting restructuring layoffs. I deleted the email without responding. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's succeeding so spectacularly that your detractors become irrelevant. As I finish typing this story, I can see my reflection in my office window. A woman who was told she was too emotional to lead, now leading one of the most successful consulting practices on Wall Street. They were right about one thing. I am emotional. I'm emotional about equality, justice, and proving that passion isn't a weakness. It's a superpower. And from my new office, 42 floors above the city that tried to break me, that feels pretty damn good.